To complete the playlist now for down points, low points for franchises, we're up to Winnipeg, which means talking about the Atlanta Thrashers as well. So when it comes to low points for Winnipeg, I don't have an ugly jersey for Winnipeg. There really isn't one since their rebranding, since they came back to Winnipeg and they got new jerseys and a new look and all that. There isn't one, which is odd. Now I know there's some people who mention the Aviator jersey, but there really isn't one. So I'm wearing my Blake Wheeler jersey. And we're going to talk about how, yes, the Winnipeg Jets have had their downbeats, and they haven't been to a Stanley Cup Finals. They've had some good runs. 2018 comes to mind, but they've only made the playoffs 3 out of 8 seasons, not including this year, when it comes to making the playoffs. So 3 out of 8, not a hugely successful rate. And of course, they made the playoffs, and then they missed again right after that. Now, when the original team moves to Phoenix, that's a huge downbeat for Canada, not just for Winnipeg. When Quebec moved, it felt kind of like this was inevitable, and it didn't feel like there was a huge grassroots movement to try to keep the team in Quebec. Remember, they had a rally and almost nobody showed up, and it was like, oh, okay. Now, in Winnipeg, on the other hand, there was tremendous community outpourings. There were rallies and fundraisers, and everything was done to keep the team, but they moved to Colorado. Or they moved to Arizona, I should say. Of course, Quebec moved to Colorado. And it's been a downward spiral for the Coyotes, it seems, for the most part. And the team that they get from Atlanta didn't look like they were much better. The Atlanta Thrashers, just an absolute sheer disaster for most of their time in Atlanta, minus a few bright spots. Now, the most losses that any goaltender has in the franchise's history, this includes Atlanta and the Winnipeg Jets, Pavlik with 158. So, and Andre Pavlik is also the highest wins total on the team's history page as well. And he's, of course, not in the Hall of Fame. Nobody's going to argue he should be in. And if you're looking at retired hockey players who played for either organization and was a top point getter, Slava Kozlov is the top point getter for the Arizona/Winnipeg franchise, who isn't in the Hall. I don't think you can put Kozlov in the Hall. I don't think you can make that argument, but pretty darn good player who played a long time with a lot of teams and played some of his best hockey in Atlanta as well. Now, in the lost asset category, if we're going to talk about the Atlanta side, you have to talk about the Kovalchuk deal. The Kovalchuk deal is a big part of the reason why the Thrashers ultimately fail. It was a failure of leadership. It was a failure when it came to the draft and when it came to managing the picks that did pan out. Marian Hossa stands out. Hossa was a huge boost to the team when they got him out of Ottawa. And then when they moved him, they just didn't get enough back. And this was a problem. And, of course, for Kovalchuk, the writing's on the wall. And, all right, he goes to New Jersey. And, of course, everything worked out forever with Kovalchuk in New Jersey. I believe that's what happened. Anyways, and then for me on the Winnipeg front, Jacob Trouba is one of those ones that are pending. So in red, you've also got the deals that you can make the argument might have been okay. I read an article on how the Stastny deal was a good one and low risk for Winnipeg. However, that draft pick turned out to be Rasmus Sandin that they traded in order to get Stastny. So yes, the team that gets the Stastny pick ends up moving it to Toronto, but Stastny didn't stay in Winnipeg, so you're giving up a first-round draft pick in order to pick up your second-line center, and he doesn't stay. He ends up going to Las Vegas. Now, Yoel Armia, I think, is also a lost asset. Now, they had to trade him out as part of a cap dump to get rid of Mason's contract to Montreal, and for Montreal, everything came up roses out of that deal. Armia is a solid forward. And over a full season, I could see him getting 25 goals. I could see him getting 50, 55 points. And then, of course, they traded a first to the Rangers for Kevin Hayes. And then they traded to get that first back, along with Pionk, for Trouba. So they traded Trouba for Hayes, but Hayes didn't stay. The first-round draft pick's kind of a saw-off. And again, there's a lot of moving parts, and you can decide as a Jets fan, was that the good move, was that a smart move, or was it not? And that Hayes doesn't stay in Winnipeg, he goes to Philadelphia, and the Jets, still to this point, you could argue, do not have that second-line center that they can rely upon. Now, I still think Roslovic could become that guy. I also think Little gets more criticism than he necessarily deserves when it comes to his time in Winnipeg. I think he's a good center, but again, the decision on whether or not their roster is better, the same. You guys can let me know your thoughts regarding that. Now, short-term coach, that's where things get interesting. It's Craig Ramsay, who had that 1 year behind the bench, 34, 36, and 12, and that's the last year that they were in Atlanta. And I remember when they moved, and I thought, it would be nice if Ramsay kept his job. Oh, never mind. Nope, they're going in another direction. So, of course, Winnipeg looks in another direction behind the bench, and I thought Ramsay was decent. But again, when a team moves, your job is potentially on the line. I've talked about the knot in the hall, so we'll move over to the longest drought. The longest drought, 7 seasons from 2008 to 2014. One thing that doesn't help to create excitement in a city is missing the playoffs every year. And Atlanta did that. They made the playoffs once the entire time they were in Atlanta. That's 2007. And they got swept in the first round. So there was no way to really create a lot of excitement if you're an Atlanta Thrashers fan during their time there. And it feels like it's a lost opportunity for the NHL. They didn't start out well either. Atlanta had some pretty strict rules in terms of who they were able to draft, so their team wasn't very good. They were 14, 57, 7-4 for 39 points that first year. Now, year 11, their last season was their 11th season. 34, 36, and 12, 80 points. So that's the season with Ramsay behind the bench, and that was 4 years after they made the playoffs for the one and only time that they did that. It's hard to generate excitement. It's hard as a fan to go, all right, I love this. This is great, and you never make the playoffs. Again, I've mentioned it before. Vancouver Grizzlies come to mind here, where, it's just not working out in Vancouver. Maybe if you gave us a team. 2011, 2012, the first year in Winnipeg, they were 37, 35, and 10 for 84 points. A lot of the players who played for that first Jets team were holdovers from the Atlanta Thrashers, which at the time I found kind of odd. And, I've always found it a little bit strange that Winnipeg didn't move more guys out when the team moved. But you know what? It worked out pretty well. Some of those guys ended up being core guys on the new Jets. And, again, Little comes to mind for me. Bufflin comes to mind as well. And the ones that were holdovers that they did trade out, Andrew Ladd, that worked out pretty well for them. So, it's been quite the ride for Winnipeg fans. We're not up to year 11 yet in Winnipeg. And this season, we'll see if they knock the Flames out and play their way in again. Now, the lowest points percentage against any one team, against Pittsburgh, they have a .308 winning percentage. Pittsburgh's been pretty good. And, of course, as Atlanta, they were pretty bad. Goals for per game, their lowest total is against Montreal, 2.28. So Montreal knows how to shut down the Thrashers or the Jets. Goals against per game is highest against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Again, the Penguins have been pretty good during most of the run that the Thrashers and then Jets have had, especially the Jets run. The Pittsburgh Penguins have been great during that whole way. So no shame in saying, we have a hard time against Pittsburgh. There are certainly a lot of teams that do. Lowest points per game for anybody who's played a minimum of 100 games. We'll start with Atlanta. David Harlock, .063. Shane Knighty, .109. Garnet Exelby, .129. And Jeff Odgers, .134. On the Winnipeg side of it, Anthony Peluso, .099. Adam Party, .124. Chris Thorburn, .141. And Mark Stewart, .142. Lowest save percentage, minimum of 50 games played. Damian Rhodes, .889 for the Atlanta Thrashers. Johan Hedberg, .900. And Milan Hanalichka, .901. Now, here's where it's interesting, too. On the Winnipeg front, there's only 3 goaltenders who have played 50 games for the Winnipeg Jets since their return to Winnipeg. Andre Pavlik, .907 save percentage is the lowest. Michael Hutchinson, .910. And Connor Hellebuck, .917. So, Brossoit has not played 50 games yet for the Winnipeg Jets. He would be the next one on the board if they keep Brossoit past this season, whatever they do from there. And goalie with the best name, there's 3 different ones. Hellebuck, I would say for the Jets, is the best name. And because that doesn't really quite look like Hellebuck. There's a Y in there that I guess is just not there. Scott Fankhauser, if we're looking at Atlanta Thrashers. And, of course, Milan Hanalichka. One of my favorite names ever in hockey, Milan Hanalichka. And Hellebuck is right up there as well. And Fankhauser. Fankhauser, though, if you have the name Scott Fankhauser, I would think that if hockey didn't work out, then maybe NASCAR would work. Fankhauser just sounds like, a guy who's passing you on corner 4. You're going into the third and the fourth corner on the oval, and Fankhauser goes around on the outside. He takes the outside lane because he's got the guys behind him. And the guy in the inside lane can't keep up, and then he wipes out, and then there's fire. And anyways, there you go. The Winnipeg Jets, they're down points. No Stanley Cup for this Winnipeg Jets. There wasn't the first time they were in Winnipeg either. And so that's one thing that they're going to be looking to remedy. Who knows? It might be soon. I have been asked many times which NHL team in Canada do you think is closest to the Cup. I don't think Winnipeg's that far off. I think that their blue line needs a player, maybe 2. But, that's top 6. And for 2 top 6, I think maybe 1 top 4 player to really put them into that category of being a contender. With Hellebuck, I wouldn't rule them out. And their overall attack is solid. They've got leadership with Blake Wheeler as well. It's a pretty good team. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And for people who watch this whole series, thank you guys so much for watching all the way through. And there will be other series yet to come. Because until we get regular hockey happening, playlists will be the order of the day. Thank you guys so much for all of your support along that way. And whichever way leads for wherever it goes from here. All right. Thanks again. I'll talk to you again soon.